morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us here on Inside NASCAR. We're at the Michigan Speedway where the DeVilbiss 400 NASCAR Winston Cup race is scheduled to roll off at 12:30 this afternoon. And how about Johnny Benson sitting on the pole in the Pennzoil Pontiac? The Bud Shootout at Daytona next February is getting crowded. Well, the NASCAR Busch Series ran here yesterday afternoon in the Detroit Gaskets 200, and the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series ran at Nashville, Tennessee last night. Phil Wurz is in our studios in Charlotte, North Carolina. He'll take a look back at those events and preview today's race. Good morning, Phil.
Thanks, Ned, and good morning, everybody. Well, we certainly hope your Sunday is going well out there. We do have plenty to catch up on. In a moment, we'll tell you how Steve Park picked up his second career Busch win. We'll also show you who played a sweet tune in Music City at last night's Craftsman Truck Series race. But first, here's a look at what else is coming your way in this one-hour edition of Inside NASCAR.
As racing's dynamic duo, Ray Evernham and Jeff Gordon have combined to set the standard for success in the Winston Cup ranks. Stephanie Boyd-Durner talks with Evernham about what makes the DuPont Chevy nearly unbeatable. While Jeff Gordon is currently on a tear, other names like Petty, Elliott, and Earnhardt have also had dominating seasons in the past. We'll take a look back at some of the sport's most memorable winning streaks. And you'll also meet Rick Crawford. This young gun is making a name for himself, challenging for Rookie of the Year honors in the Craftsman Truck Series. These stories and more are ready to roll on this edition of Inside NASCAR.
Inside NASCAR is brought to you by Miller Lite, who reminds you that anything can happen at Miller time, and by the UAW International Union and General Motors Corporation. Assembly line to finish line, teamwork wins.
And welcome back. Johnny Benson is on the pole for this afternoon's DeVilbiss 400 race at Michigan. Benson, the only third Pontiac driver to start from the pole this year. The last to win at Michigan in that make of car, Rusty Wallace did it back in 1989. You know, I think our Tyler Potter was in high school back then, but he's at Michigan today with news and a preview of today's race. Good morning, TP.
Thanks a lot, Phil. You know, last week, Jeff Bodine made news for finishing second at Watkins Glen. Here in Michigan, he announced his plans for the future with Mate Motorsports. At a Saturday press conference, Bodine introduced Tim Brewer as his new team manager, as well as two new partners for his QVC team.
We need a lot of things in this team. So Tim and Pat Tryson, myself, Jim, Mate, John Porter, we're all going to work hard to get this together as quick as we can. It'll take a few weeks, maybe a month or two, but by the end of the season, our goal is to have this team up, running, consistently up front, be competitive on a weekly basis.
Las Vegas hit the jackpot Tuesday when it was awarded its first ever Winston Cup race. The inaugural event will be March 1st next year and will include a Saturday Busch race. The Busch cars made their debut at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway earlier this year. The addition of Vegas moves Richmond's first race from March to June. The Labor Day weekend at Darlington is fast approaching, and the track, as you know, has undergone a major facelift. The backstretch is now the front stretch, and the front stretch is now the backstretch. The new finish line is now halfway down the old backstretch, thanks to Steve Grissom and Mike Skinner, who took a break from testing to take part in the historical painting. In news off the track, owner Rick Hendrick pleaded guilty to mail fraud Thursday in Asheville, North Carolina. He's free on a $25,000 bond until sentencing, which should take place within 60 days. The government is recommending 10 to 16 months and a $250,000 fine, but given Hendrick's leukemia, he'll be allowed to serve the sentence in home detention. Qualifying got underway an hour and a half late because of the heavy rain on Friday. Mark Martin was the second car out and established the early mark with a time of 39.356 seconds. Martin withstood the challenges from both Ricky Craven and Dick Trickle before Johnny Benson knocked him from the top spot by circling the 2-mile oval in 39.273 seconds, 183.332 miles per hour. After failing to make the last two races, Morgan Shepherd is in the field today thanks to a new crew chief, Michael McSwain. Morgan starts 15th. A trio of Fords gave it their best shot, but neither Dale Jarrett, Jeff Burton, or Ted Musgrave could keep Benson from winning his second career pole and first in 46 races. Joining me now is Johnny Benson, the pole sitter. And Johnny, first of all, congratulations. You already have one pole to your credit. Your previous best qualifying effort this year was a 7th. take us back to Friday, though. The Fords were running so strong, especially Team Roush. Were you surprised you wound up on top?
Well, I'll tell you what, you know, the Pennzoil Pontiac ran good off the truck, and it was just a matter of, you know, just getting a good lap in, and we were about 10th quick, so anytime that you're right there at the front in the top 10, you got an outside chance of getting a pole, and that's what we did.
You grew up in Grand Rapids, about 100 miles from here. Did that just make it that much more special for you doing it here in front of the home fans?
Well, it sure does. You know, I got a lot of great fans up here in Michigan, and a lot of them probably came out here to qualify, and so that was a pretty cool deal for us to be able to sit on a pole and to get a pole this year. I mean, we're hoping that we could do that, and now that we've done that, you know, we still need to get a race win now.
I don't know if you're aware, but if you win this race, you'll get a brand new $100,000 DeVilbiss motorcycle. That's got to be pretty exciting. Can you see yourself riding a motorcycle?
Well, I've had motorcycles in the past, so yeah, I mean, I tried to talk them into just giving it away for qualifying, but they wouldn't do it. Yeah, we're just, you know, but, you know, we're just going to have to see what the race brings us today, and just, I don't know, we'll find out.
Johnny, congratulations. Best of luck today. And now let's take a look at the rest of the first 5 rows for this afternoon's race. Benson's pole is just the second by a Pontiac in the history of Michigan Speedway. Mark Martin starts beside Benson in row 1. In his last 20 starts at MIS, Martin's finished out of the top 10 only once. Row 2, it's Ricky Craven and Dale Jarrett. Jarrett's the defending champ and was the pole sitter for the June race. Jeff Burton and Bobby Labonte hold down row 3. Labonte swept both cup races here in 1995. Next in line are Ted Musgrave and Ken Schrader. Musgrave made his Winston Cup debut here 7 years ago. And in row 5, it's the Fords of Dick Trickle and Jeff Bodine.
And in Saturday's NASCAR Busch Series race, Mark Martin was looking to surpass the Ironman Jack Ingram for the all-time Busch Series victory lead, but it was not meant to be. Rookie Steve Park continued his great season by playing the mileage game in Michigan. Tyler Potter shows us how the driver of the AC Delco Chevy managed to put his car in victory lane.
Mark Martin started 9th in the Detroit Gasket 200, but it didn't take him long to assume the race lead, 13 laps to be exact, after passing Bobby Labonte. The first and only caution came out on lap 32 when David Bonnet slammed into the outside wall. Martin stayed in the lead by getting out of the pits the quickest. In the second half, Jimmy Spencer made a strong charge, getting as high as second behind Martin, but on lap 87, Martin had to come in for fuel, allowing Steve Park to take over the lead. Park did not pit, and the gamble paid off as he held on for his second win of the year by 5 car lengths over Jimmy Spencer. Park went the final 66 laps on just 1 tank of fuel.
They kept telling me conserve fuel when you can, conserve fuel when you can, and every time I got in the draft, I could run about 3/4 throttle down the straightaway behind Bobby Labonte and Jimmy Spencer, and I knew we were conserving fuel, but I didn't know if it was going to be enough to the end, and right there with 5 laps to go, I had to kind of run wide open to get through the lap traffic to get to the end.
With us having to stop with 30 miles left in the race, I knew everybody had to stop. You know, I mean, because I knew nobody could be getting that much better mileage, so I don't know if we had a hole in the gas tank or what.
Meanwhile, the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series was in Nashville Saturday night for the Federated Auto Parts 250. You know, Ron Hornaday is the man to beat. He had won 6 of the last 8 races in the series. He was looking to make it 7 out of 9. Ron Hornaday was beside pole sitter Mike Bliss for the start of the race, and the driver of the Napa Chevy would challenge all night long. But with about 40 laps to go, Jack Sprague of the number 24 Quaker State Chevy managed to pass Hornaday. From there, Sprague would amass as much as a 3-second lead over the number 16 truck. But with 2 laps to go on lap 248, Jimmy Hensley brought out the final caution with a cut right front tire. But Truck Series rules say you cannot end an event under caution. Remember, Hornaday is a master at restarts, but Sprague was equal to the challenge. He got the green, and 2 laps later, the checkers to grab his 3rd win of the season, and it was his first win on a short track. And crew chief Dennis Conner is a little lighter on top this morning because he promised to shave his head if 1 Mile Jack could win on a short track. Hornaday, Butch Miller, Dave Resendez, and rookie Stacy Compton rounded out the top 5. And just call Dennis clean-cut Connor. Sprague remains the points leader by 35 points over Rich Bickle. Ron Hornaday moves into 3rd, 94 points behind Sprague. Now that you're caught up, Ned Jarrett will join you from the North Carolina Auto Racing Hall of Fame in a moment. Again, Johnny Benson on the pole for the DeVilbiss 400 at Michigan in the Pennzoil Pontiac. Have a great Sunday, everybody. Enjoy the race that Inside NASCAR continues right after this.
We're at the North Carolina Motorsports Hall of Fame in Mooresville, North Carolina. They have a lot of great cars on display here, and some of them include some of the modified cars from the early days of NASCAR racing. This 1937 Ford Coupe was driven by Eddie Royster, and this 1934 Ford Coupe behind me was driven by the late and great Marty Robbins, who was a great country music singer who loved his racing. Did you know that Ray Evernham drove modified cars? And he decided to go the crew chief role instead. He's the crew chief for Jeff Gordon in the NASCAR Winston Cup Series. Stephanie Boyd-Durner has this story on Ray Evernham.
What Jeff Gordon has accomplished in only 5 full seasons on the Winston Cup circuit has been nothing less than phenomenal. 27 wins in only 143 starts, 1993 Rookie of the Year, and of course the 1995 Winston Cup title. That's more than most drivers accomplish their whole careers. And calling the shots for Gordon every step of the way has been his crew chief and mentor, Ray Evernham. A former modified driver, Evernham eventually turned in his driving gloves for a set of wrenches. And now together with Gordon, he's on his way to achieving the dynasty they've been building towards since day one of their careers at Hendrick Motorsports.
We want to win another Winston Cup championship, especially this year. Want to keep winning. There are some records we want to set. Want to be always on the leading edge of technology. And I enjoy winning one race at a time. You know, I enjoy the crew chief part of the race. I enjoy, come Sunday, you know, I really enjoy it. And as long as I do that, you know, I'll just continue to look forward to it. I don't see in that end. I just enjoy trying to win one race at a time.
You say you enjoy the crew chief part of it. Is there ever a part of you, though, that says, the driver part, you used to drive, that says, wow, if only I could be behind the wheel doing some of this stuff? Or is it enough to be the crew chief?
It's enough with the Winston Cup to be the crew chief. You know, I always like the open wheel cars. I still want to do a little bit of drag racing, and every once in a while I'd really love to drive a modified. But when I see, you know, Jeff and Dale Jarrett, Dale Earnhardt and Rusty and those guys, I'm not in that league, never was in that league, and don't really have a desire to compete with them. But if I could get them all on a little short 3/8 or half mile in a modified, I might race against them. Driver I have ever.
Why is he so good?
I don't know, and a lot of people ask me that. I ask myself that. I don't know what makes him so good. You know, the same as people don't know what makes Michael Jordan Michael Jordan. You know, the things that make him the best that I've ever seen. Of course, his natural talent, you know, and his ability to control that race car. But he's a tremendous thinker. He's very smart in the car. He gets the job done. He searches out a place on the racetrack to make the car work best, and he's able to keep his cool a lot better. You know, I want to say the older God, he's 26 now. The older he gets, the more experience he gets. He amazes me every week. You know, he does something every week that really impresses me.
Obviously, he's got a lot of natural talent. There's a lot of people, though, that credit you with bringing him to where he is. Do you feel like that you've contributed? Could you guys be as good as you are without having each other?
I don't think so. I think both of us would have done well in different situations, but we can do, you know, really good things together. And I think the rest of the team is that way. I think Jeff and I could have done well together, but we wouldn't have done as well if we didn't get, you know, Ed Guzzo and Brian Weitzel and the rest of the people that are back there at the 24 car. So it's just been a combination of the right people. Every once in a while, a team comes along like that. You know, the Miami Dolphins dominate for a while, or the Steelers, and it's just the right combination of people, and we've been lucky enough just to hit that right combination.
Because you guys are so good. I mean, Jeff is not the only one getting booed. Was it Texas or wherever, where the whole crowd booed you because you wanted to go check out the track?
In Michigan, yeah. And I went back and went to the garage area, and I punched Jeff square in the arm. He said, "What's that for?" I said, "Because they're booing me now." But it used to bother me. You know, everybody goes, "Oh, it doesn't bother me." It bothers you, okay? You know, it bothers you. If one person doesn't like me, I want to know why. And I think I just started to realize, not that they don't like you, but they're there, they're cheering for their driver, and we get an awful lot of people that do cheer for us and write us letters, and, you know, the boos still bother me, but not near as much as they used to.
Are you guys good friends off the track as well? Not just the team members, but especially you and Jeff?
I think we're good friends, as you would be a good friend if you had a sister who was a good friend, but there's an age difference between Jeff and I, 14 years. So we don't do a lot of things socially because there's just a big gap there, but I think that we're good friends. I consider us good friends. Would hope he looks at me. I guess you're about as close as two people can get without actually being relatives. So as far as, you know, going to dinner or going to different clubs or doing things, we don't do a lot of that together, but we share a relationship that would be kind of big brother, little brother.
What about communication? I mean, obviously that's the key to most people's success in life. How have you and Jeff learned to communicate? Did you have to come up with a system or just kind of get used to each other? Or?
I think that's where we were the luckiest. Jeff and I met in 1990, and we hit it off immediately. There was just some kind of an instant communication. The first day I met him, I liked him. He was a really good kid. He was a little kid at that time, but he's still a little kid. But we just hit it off. And I don't know whether it was because of his driving background, or I think in some ways I'm a lot like John Bickford, his stepdad, who probably deserves most of the credit for getting Jeff Gordon to where he is now. I mean, Jeff deserves a lot of it, obviously, because of his talent, but John built the foundation, and I think maybe in some ways I'm like John, but Jeff and I have never had a communication problem. We've always been able to, when something's bothering me, he figures it out, and I've been able to know exactly what he wants in a race car.
Where did you learn that, though? I mean, where did you get your foundation from?
I made all the mistakes that I don't want him to make. So, you know, I'm 14 years older, and I got to work around a lot of great drivers in my years at IROC. You know, A.J. Foyt and Mario Andretti, and you know, I got to spend time with Roger Penske and Jay Signori. So I've been kind of learning as we went along. But, you know, again, when Jeff and I met, there was a mix. You know, he filled a void in my life, and maybe I filled a void in his. I'm getting to still accomplish a lot of the things that I always wished about or dreamt about, and now I'm realizing most of that through his eyes. So it, you know, I don't know, fate, chance, however it works, but you know, he's filled a void in my life.
Hi, this is Jeff Hammond, crew chief of the Parts America Chevrolet. Today let's talk about the steering box and how important it is to the driver as well as the crew. As you can see, we have two boxes here. They both look alike, but they're quite different. This one is a 12-to-1 that we run on the short tracks. It's more like, for you to understand, is that Camaro type steering. Very quick, very firm. While this one over here is a 17-to-1 that we run on the speedways. It's more like, I guess you call it Cadillac type drive. Slower and smoother. It's very important not to scrub off speed if you want to run fast at Daytona and Talladega. So if you want a happy driver, you need to start with the proper steering box and the proper valving. It always makes the driver a lot happier when the car is driving like he wants to and steering the way he wants it to feel.
This is one of the most recognizable cars in all of motorsports, the number 43 of Richard Petty. This is a 1979 Chevrolet. Some of you might not have known that Petty drove a Chevrolet, but he's had a lot of different makes of cars over the years. And certainly he's won a lot of different types of races, too. He was the first driver inducted into this North Carolina Motorsports Hall of Fame. He's had some winning streaks over the years with those 200 wins that he accumulated, and a lot of other drivers have had some winning streaks, too. So let's go back to Stephanie Boyd-Durner, and she has a story on winning streaks.
When Jeff Gordon started winning races in NASCAR's top division, he did it in a big way. After posting his first 2 wins in 1994, Gordon went on to claim 7 victories in 1995, 10 in 1996, and is already up to 8 this year. In fact, at this point in the season, he's moved up to 16th on the all-time win list, just behind Fireball Roberts. That's 7 spots higher than at the end of last year, and this season is far from over. But long before this phenom came along, plenty of other drivers had hefty winning streaks. That includes the king, Richard Petty, who holds the modern era record for wins in a season at 13. Many NASCAR experts think Gordon could well be on his way to breaking that record this year, but Petty says he hasn't given it much thought.
Not really. The only thing I'm proud of is if anybody breaks the record, it's my record. So, but other than that's what they're put out there for. I don't even know what the record was when I broke it.
Well, actually, when NASCAR began its Winston Cup division in 1972, Bobby Allison won 10 races that year to Petty's 8, giving Allison the original mark to shoot at. The next year, David Pearson went to victory lane 11 times, and that was the record until Petty racked up lucky number 13 in 1975. Pearson's record speaks for itself, but he admits he was pretty skeptical at first about Gordon's rapid success.
Well, I was surprised that when he first come here, he started winning right off the bat. And I was surprised then. I thought it was luck to start with, but, well, it didn't take long for him to prove to everybody it wasn't luck, to his skill. But he's a smart driver and a good driver, no doubt about it. So I'm not surprised now, not at all.
But it's not as if Gordon is alone. In 25 years of Winston Cup racing, winning streaks have always been a proven fact. Again, Petty leads the list with 13 wins in 1975, followed by Darrell Waltrip, who racked up 12 wins in both 1981 and 82. Of course, Bill Elliott's 11 wins in his 1985 $1 million season are famous, and he's joined in that total by Pearson and Dale Earnhardt. Drivers with 10 wins in a season include not only Petty and Pearson, but also Bobby Allison, Cale Yarborough, who had 2 10-win seasons, and of course Rusty Wallace, who rode his biggest streak in 1993, just 3 years before Gordon did the same.
It's pretty phenomenal to win that many races like he's been doing. Yeah, it really is. But I'll tell you, they said the same thing about me when I won 10 races in 1993 and finished second in the championship. Jeff won 10 races last year and finished second in the championship, and they're all going, man, that's unreal. I said, well, I've been there, done that one. I know what that one feels like.
Which once again brings up the question of the ever-debated point system. Since the current system was instituted in 1975, the driver who has won the most races in a season has lost the title to someone else 11 times. So the question is, should drivers be rewarded more for winning races?
You've got to build consistency. That's what the point system's built all about. And when I won the 10 races and lost the championship by just a little bit to Earnhardt, I thought, man, I wish we would have had more points for a winner. And then I won 8 the following year, then 6 last year, and now I'm only at 1 this year and trying to regain that. When I win a bunch more, you come back to interview me again, I'll have maybe a different comment. But right now, I'm taking the high road on that one.
Regardless of what it means in the points, there's no question that Gordon's success over the last couple of years has made him an easy target for many fans and even some other drivers. But turns out that's nothing new either. Just ask some of the greats if they ever got booed.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Probably still am.
Definitely. Anytime that they boo you or holler for you, anything, at least you know they recognize you and they know your name, at least. And so you don't worry about that. When they boo you, it's still all good, because at least they're hollering for you.
You look at it from the standpoint when you are winning, everybody shoots for you, but I think the only ones that really got upset were the competitors that you had to run against. I think as far as fans is concerned, they just they come to see the race, and a lot of them probably didn't even care who won the race. But again, the circumstances are much different now, and I think that's where the jealousy comes in more probably with the competitors than it does with the fans.
So did any of these guys ever get accused of cheating?
Oh, we always accuse that of everyone, not only myself, but, I accuse other people of doing it.
Of course, Gordon has been accused of everything from cheating to getting special treatment from NASCAR. But the guys who have been there say there's an even greater force at work.
Well, there's a lot of good luck, and today competition's been so great that if you have a problem, it's hard to overcome a problem. Just like, for example, Daytona for us, we ran well all day long. got down the end of the race and we couldn't put ourselves in victory lane. But, you know, for anybody that has a good winning streak, it's like, you know, you come to the races and you can't do anything wrong. And then all of a sudden you come back and you can't do anything right. So, I don't know. It's just the luck, the magic of putting it all together or whatever.
You got to be able to win the races going in, then you got to have a lot of luck to make it work. So a lot of times circumstances wins you races, but you got to be ready to take care of those circumstances, and that's the way Jeff and them's been this year.
And while Gordon may be riding the wave right now, if history repeats itself, he's just blazing the path for more drivers to come.
Well, thanks, Stephanie. Richard Petty still holds a lot of records in NASCAR Winston Cup racing, and Jeff Gordon is closing in on one of those records. That's the most wins in a season in the modern era. Of course, Gordon has 8 now. We'll be back with a story on Rick Crawford. Darrell Waltrip will be with us, mailbox, and lots more coming up. So you stay with us.
Once the United States, the world knows who Rick Crawford is, it's going to be a shock because he's here and he's going to stay. And like I say, he's going to be one of those that stands on the gas.
When are you going to win a NASCAR event? Hey, if I knew, I'd go to Las Vegas and I'd bet everything I own on the win. So I guess that would have to be it.
Well, it was kind of the whole scenario deal. Last year here, I was standing at Terry's truck with my interstate uniform on, and a guy walked up and asked me, he says, "Terry, let me ask you something about the racetrack." And I looked at and I went, put my hand over my name, and I said, "Yeah, sure." He asked me all about it, and I answered everything Kellogg's, answered everything like Terry would have answered it, and the guy walked off, and I looked back, and they were all laying on the floor laughing. Terry was standing right there beside me when the guy asked me, so I thought that was pretty funny.
Most of the guys will come right up to you and they'll say, "What happened?" And I'll say, and I'll think to myself, "You got the camera, you saw what happened," you know. And it's one of them deals. Like, I guess they want to see your perspective, but it's like the picture speaks for itself. You know, I'll never forget. It didn't happen to me, but it happened to Darrell at Michigan back in the early '80s. Cale and Darrell was running for the win. Cale kind of had Darrell beat, and Darrell went down in 3 and 4 and kind of crowded Cale, but Cale still beat him to the start-finish line. What made Darrell mad, Darrell tried to spin Cale out after the race going into turn 1. Well, he ended up spinning himself out. Darrell gets it all collected back up, comes back in the garage area, and the guy runs over there with a mic and says, "Well, what happened?" And then Darrell says, "No problem." And I mean, I'll tell you what, that was the way it all happened was the funniest thing I've ever saw.
Maybe I'll stick with the first thing. Now, your question was the stupidest thing I've ever been asked.
Here at the North Carolina Motorsports Hall of Fame, there's a display on 3-time NASCAR Winston Cup champion Darrell Waltrip, who is celebrating 25 years of competition this year in the NASCAR Winston Cup Series. Darrell lives in Franklin, Tennessee now, but he's originally from Owensboro, Kentucky. A lot of race drivers have come from Owensboro. His brother Michael, of course, was born there, along with the Green brothers, Jeremy Mayfield. So Darrell talks about the Owensboro connection.
Growing up in Owensboro, Kentucky, and having been a fan of some of the people that from Owensboro that were involved in NASCAR Winston Cup racing, G.C. Spencer, for one, was the driver that most people know, and he was from Owensboro. Lewis and Crawford Clemens, a couple of great mechanics that worked in Winston Cup racing back in the 60s. There's always been a heritage there that, for whatever reason, this little bitty town of 50,000 people on the Ohio River in western Kentucky has produced incredible talent. Me and Michael and Jeremy Mayfield, David and Jeff Green and their brother Mark, just so many guys have come out of that area, mechanics in Winston Cup racing. I think there are 15 different mechanics on different teams that have come out of the Owensboro area. And a lot of people say, well, why would that be? Here's a town that's really, you think about a town producing that kind of talent, it'd be somewhere in the Carolinas. But here we are in Owensboro, Kentucky. I think a lot of it had to do with just the very fact that G.C. Spencer was a hero of mine, and I wanted to follow in his footsteps. and I did. And I think the kids from Owensboro, there were 2 little racetracks there. We raced 2 nights a week. It's really a race fever kind of a town. A lot of interest in Winston Cup racing and a lot of interest in local racing. And I think I left out of there, and the kids at home then saw the success I had, and they wanted to follow in my footsteps, and they have. And my brother Michael is a good example of that. I don't think, had I not been a racer, I'm sure he wouldn't have been a racer, because we're not from a long line of racers. My father was a good mechanic, and he liked working on his own cars and that type of thing. But as far as having ever driven a race car or been involved in racing, he wasn't. And so it's a developed interest that I think a lot of people had caught on to there at home. And so all those kids, they saw the success and how well I had done. I think they just followed along.
Well, thanks, Darrell, and continued good luck for the balance of the year on your 25th anniversary celebration. He's been running good in a lot of the NASCAR Winston Cup races so far. We'll be back with a story on Rick Crawford, the mailbox, and more, so you stay with us. The Inside NASCAR mailbox is brought to you by Miller Lite. Our question today is from David Drennan from Clover, South Carolina. What is the deal this year with the GM cars looking like they have headlights?
Hi, I'm Glenn Taylor, manager of motorsports marketing for Chevrolet Motor Division in Detroit. And David, thanks for your question. The reason why we made the headlights decals on the cars look like the production car is that we really believe that we race on Sunday and win on Sunday and sell on Monday. And so we wanted to make the race cars look a lot more like the production cars.
If you have a question for the Inside NASCAR mailbox, write to us at Inside NASCAR, Post Office Box 240417, Charlotte, North Carolina 28224. If we use your question on the air, you'll receive this embroidered Miller Lite jacket and a cap and shirt from Chase Authentics, the authentic trackside apparel of NASCAR.
This 1959 Chevrolet was the first car that David Pearson drove in what is now the NASCAR Winston Cup Series. It was called Grand National back then. Now, David, like many of us who raced back in that era, drove against Bob Welborn, one of the best short track drivers that I ever raced against. He's in the National Motorsports Press Association Hall of Fame. Unfortunately, Bob passed away this week, and our condolences to his family. We'll be back with more on Inside NASCAR right after this.
We've got a very tight-knit organization. You know, everybody's been friends for a long time, and you know, it's just like my second family, because the rest of my family's in Washington. He's got 2 brothers and a sister that live back here, but you know, it's just like one big family.
One of the latest additions here at the North Carolina Motorsports Hall of Fame is this truck that ran in a few NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series events. Ricky Johnson drove it some, and Kenny Wallace, I think, drove it a race or 2 as well. Well, Rick Crawford hopes his truck doesn't get in here anytime soon. He's a rookie this year in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series and is running well. Tyler Potter has his story.
Once the United States, the world knows who Rick Crawford is, it's going to be a shock, because he's here and he's going to stay. And like I say, he's going to be one of those that stands on the gas.
If you don't know who Rick Crawford is, you should. He's currently second in the Cintas rookie point standings. Not bad for a guy who's waited 16 years for a shot in one of NASCAR's top divisions.
I tell you, you know, I come from Mobile, Alabama, and I raced at Pensacola Five Flag Speedway on Friday night and Mobile International Speedway on Saturday night for many years. And probably the reason I stayed there so long was I didn't have the funding to get out and travel the circuit, travel the world and the United States, I guess, from coast to coast. All of a sudden, 86, 87 came along. We started traveling. We started getting some breaks. I got some financial backing and so forth. Took me out of Mobile, took me across the United States, and, you know, finally here we are in the Craftsman Truck Series. The way I look at it is a lot of our hard work and dedication is really starting to turn around now. And the experience I gained over the years, I gained it slow and easy, so it's sticking. So every lap we make on the racetrack, I mean, that's something you learn before, and that would make the car go fast.
Crawford comes to the Truck Series via the All-Pro Series, where he'd been since 1984. So why now? Crawford needed a change, so when the opportunity came along to make the move, the Truck Series seemed logical. His sponsor of 6 years thought so too. Circle Bar Motel and RV Park out of Texas operates 2 truck stops. Everybody was happy, but there was still the transition.
The All-Pro Series, you're running 390 carburetors, plastic cars we call it. There's 600 pounds difference between an All-Pro car and a Craftsman truck. And we felt like that was going to be the big difference. But once we got involved in the Truck Series, got the geometry on the front end sort of figured out, it just started, coming to me. The engines was built by Lozano Brothers out in Texas. Those things started running, and ever since first race in Orlando, we just fit right in, I guess.
Through 17 races, Crawford has 7 top 10s. His best finish was a 3rd at the Pronto Auto Parts 400 in Texas.
I'm overwhelmed by success already. My boss is very happy about our year. His family's happy about our year. They went to Texas to watch us run. We finished 3rd there on the first super speedway for the trucks. And I mean, we were greatly surprised, but also we're rewarded because of our hard work and effort.
Crawford's sudden success in his first year of trucks has prompted him to reconsider his timetable of contending for a championship, and more importantly, making the jump to Winston Cup.
Maybe rushed it a little bit. I'm not getting any younger. I'm also very aggressive. I wouldn't like to move somewhere else and maybe lose that because of age or whatever. So right now, I think it'd be a pretty good time to move on. Maybe another year in the trucks. Maybe next year we could run a good solid season for the championship and then move on if that happens to come. But right now, I'm happy where I'm at.
So what more can this rookie do to turn even more heads the last 9 races?
I mean, I'm not one of those to go out and ride around, and I mash the gas pretty hard. We try to keep it under control and race clean, race fair, and I think our miles we finished this year really proves that.
Of active drivers, Rusty Wallace is second on the all-time win list at the Michigan International Speedway with a total of 4. He's second only to Bill Elliott. The 1988 Winston Cup champion has a total of 7 career wins on the 2-mile super speedway. So he's definitely a Michigan master. All of his wins came in the 80s, including 4 in a row in 1985 and 1986. In 1985, Elliott started 3rd. By day's end, he had to fight off the likes of Tim Richmond, Darrell Waltrip, and Jeff Bodine. But when the checkers flew, it was Bill Elliott living up to his Michigan Magician nickname. In Victory Lane, he talked about the opening laps.
Bodine was there trying me on the inside, and I had my eye on him, but then when I looked up, there Darrell was on the outside. And I knew Bodine didn't see Darrell on the outside. I mean, I knew what was going to happen. So I started easing out of the throttle there, and then here they started coming together, and I clipped Bodine a little bit, and he turned and went in toward the wall. And then I had to back off the throttle, and then here comes somebody else, and they hit me on the right side because I was wiggling around there, and then somebody else come along, and I hit them on the left side. So I was having a heck of a time.
Then in 1986, it was more of the same for Bill Elliott. Once again, he swept both Michigan events for sponsor Coors and car owner Harry Milling.
The car worked so good, I felt like that after the first race here, we went back and worked the car out a little bit better, and it was absolutely perfect. I don't know what I could have done if somebody come up and beat me. I don't know what I could have done to beat them because it was absolutely perfect.
So if the past has anything to do with predicting the future, Bill Elliott could very well get back to his winning ways this weekend at Michigan.
You remember last year when Mike Bliss got up on the side and took out about 70 feet of guardrail at the Bristol Motor Speedway? This is the truck that he was in. Of course, he walked away from it okay. Well, we'll be back at Bristol Motor Speedway next weekend with the NASCAR Winston Cup drivers and the Busch drivers. And we'll be right here, of course, on TNN on Inside NASCAR. Let's take a look at what we have coming up for you.
We'll have part 2 of our conversation with Crew Chief Ray Evernham. For the DuPont Chevy team, everything is coming up roses, but for Ray, it's been the result of a lot of hard work and rolling with several of life's hard punches. Ted Musgrave is a consistent contender on the Winston Cup scene, but would like to join his teammates Mark Martin and Jeff Burton in the win column. We'll catch up with this likable member of Roush's Raiders. Those stories and more next week on Inside NASCAR.
To be good in the NASCAR Winston Cup Series and have a chance to win, you got to have a good pit crew behind you, and certainly Jeff Gordon has one of the best. Now, since most of the teams are located in North Carolina, you might think that most of the pit crew members come from this state, but that's not the case. They come from all over. Chad Little is from the state of Washington, and many of his pit crew members are too, and that is the subject of this week's Inside NASCAR Profile.
For most NASCAR Winston Cup teams, it takes a while for members of a crew to get to know each other. But for Chad Little's race day crew, they've known each other for years. That's because they're all from Spokane, Washington, a whole country away from the traditional hotbed of the sport. Bright tire changer Jason Little is Chad's brother, and Jason has known tire carrier Scott Kimball since junior high and through their years at Washington State University. Now the friends are partners on Sunday afternoon.
He was working in Spokane and being a bartender, and you know, we kept in communication and told him to come on back and try it out. And he came back and liked it and been here ever since. We have a very unique team. A lot of us are from Washington, which makes it unique. And I think in order to be a top-ranked team, especially in Winston Cup, you need to have that chemistry. And even though we went to high school together, that makes it much more stronger. Well, I met Chad in 1982 as a little freshman at Washington State University, which is about an hour south of Spokane.
In 82, when you guys were freshmen, did you all have these, you know, dreams of what you guys be doing now?
Probably like a lot of freshmen, you have no idea what you're going to be doing when you're a little bit older. And as far as NASCAR Winston Cup, there's not a big following out in the Northwest. And if I didn't know Chad, I wouldn't have known nothing about racing. And when I moved back here, and you know, tell your family and friends you're going to go work for a Winston Cup driver as a business manager, they just look at you like you're crazy.
Dan Ditburner is Chad Little's jackman. He's known Chad since their junior high days back in Spokane.
Every once in a while, we'll cut loose and start talking about the old days.
What are some of the things, crazy things you guys used to do together?
Oh, really can't tell.
Ditburner got back together with Chad a couple of years ago. And aside from finding it hard to get a good latte outside of the great Northwest, these Washington Staters are having fun in the world of NASCAR racing.
It's just like one big family.
Well, folks, that's all the time we have for this show. We hope you enjoyed it, and our thanks to Jerry Cashman and all the folks here at the North Carolina Motorsports Hall of Fame for allowing us to show you around this facility. If you ever get an opportunity, you should come by here like these fans. We appreciate them stopping by and watch us tape this show. You join us again here on TNN for more on Inside NASCAR.